I'll start this the same way I told my friend the night it happened, with the thing that's still stuck in my head, even now. I wasn't alone on that trail, and the part that keeps me awake is that whoever was out there, they never said a single word. I knew something was wrong the moment I heard the second set of footsteps, just a few feet behind me. Not loud, not rushed, just matching mine. Every step, every pause. And at first I told myself it was nothing, just the echo of my own boots on the switchbacks. But echoes don't breathe. And that night, something was breathing right behind me. This happened last October, around the time the nights started getting colder. I'd been doing a lot of late hikes after class to clear my head. Just short ones, nothing crazy. There's a trail about 30 minutes from where I used to live, a long loop that climbs a ridge overlooking the entire valley. Pretty popular during the day, but practically abandoned after sunset. That night, I got there later than usual. My car was the only one in the gravel lot. The sky was already turning dark blue when I stepped out and locked up. It was 6:47 p.m., I remember because I checked my phone before starting the trail. I told myself I'd go up to the overlook, take a few pictures, then head back before it got too dark. The air smelled like dry pine and dust. No wind, no bugs. Just that dead early winter stillness that makes everything sound closer than it should. I started up the trail at an easy pace. The trail begins wide and flat, then narrows into a series of zigzagging switchbacks carved into the slope. From there, it climbs straight up toward the overlook. I'd done it so many times that my legs practically moved on autopilot. About 10 minutes in, the last bit of light faded behind the ridge. I switched on my headlamp, just a cheap one with a narrow beam, and kept going. I remember thinking it felt unusually quiet. Sometimes you hear coyotes, sometimes distant traffic. But that night, nothing. Just my breathing, my boots on dirt, the crunch of gravel under my soles. And then, another crunch, right behind me. I stopped walking, and whatever was behind me stopped too. I turned around slowly, raising my headlamp, expecting, hoping, to see a deer or something. But the beam didn't reach far. It illuminated maybe 20 feet, just enough to show the trail curving into darkness. No movement, no sound. I told myself it was a branch falling, or an animal shifting in the brush, so I kept walking. A minute later, I heard it again. Step, step, step. I froze. The sound froze. That's when my chest tightened, because this time I was sure that was a person. I don't care how many nights you spent outdoors, you don't mistake the sound of a human foot on loose dirt. It's different, heavy in a deliberate way. I didn't want to turn around again. Turning around would make it real. So instead, I called out, "Hey, you good back there?" Silence, no answer, not even a rustle. And the weirdest part, I didn't feel watched. I felt avoided, like whoever was out there was trying very hard not to be seen. I felt my pulse start to quicken. I took a slow breath and tried to keep moving. The trail steepened, and as I climbed the switchbacks, I noticed something else. The footsteps stayed exactly the same distance behind me. Not closer, not farther, just there. Every turn of the switchback made it feel like they were right around the corner, like if I took one step backward, I'd bump into them. At one point, I clicked off my headlamp, hoping to catch a silhouette behind me. But when the beam died, the world went black, and then I heard it, breathing, a slow inhale, sharp, like someone trying not to make noise. Then a long, shaky exhale. I turned my head slowly, eyes straining in the dark, but I saw nothing. I lifted my hand to turn the headlamp back on, and the breathing stopped. Click. Light filled the trail again. Empty, completely empty. I tried to laugh it off, tell myself it was in my head, but my hands were shaking. I picked up the pace. The trail narrowed until it was barely wide enough for one person. On my left was a steep drop into the trees. On my right, a vertical wall of dirt and roots. There was nowhere for someone to step off without making noise. But somehow the footsteps kept moving too. Regardless of how carefully I stepped, how quickly I walked, how long I paused, they matched me perfectly. I kept glancing over my shoulder. Each time, the headlamp beam found nothing. This went on for maybe 20 minutes. 20 minutes of calculating every sound, every breath. I reached the stretch of trail just before the overlook, the part where it levels out and widens again. There's a wooden fence there, and the trees open up so you can see the whole valley. Even in the dark, you can see the faint silhouettes of distant houses and streetlights. I walked up to the overlook and let out a shaky breath. I was alone. For a moment, I convinced myself that whatever I heard had stopped at the narrow section. But then, crunch, footstep, just one, behind me, right at the edge of the trees. I didn't turn around immediately. I just stood there gripping the wooden railing, feeling the cold press of panic slide up my back. Then I heard something that made my stomach drop. A second footstep, like someone shifting their weight. Very slowly, I turned my head. The headlamp lit up a small section of trail behind me, empty at first. Then a figure moved just at the edge of the light. Not towards me, not away. It stepped sideways, out of view, like it didn't want to be seen. My throat went dry. "Who's there?" Nothing. Then from the darkness, I heard another sound. Not footsteps, a whisper. Too faint to understand, but close. Too close. I snapped. My body moved before I could think. I bolted down the trail, running full speed, barely staying upright on the loose gravel. Branches scraped my arms. My headlamp bounced violently. My breath tore out of my chest. And behind me, footsteps. Fast, matching mine again. No stumbling, no heavy breathing, just perfect, terrifying rhythm. I didn't dare look back, but I could feel it. That presence closing the distance, keeping pace, refusing to fall behind. Every switchback I turned, the footsteps turned too. Every sharp corner, they followed without hesitation. At one point, something brushed the back of my jacket. Not enough to pull, just enough to confirm it. They were right behind me. I pushed harder, legs burning. My lungs screamed, but adrenaline kept me moving. I could see the trailhead sign glowing faintly in the distance, reflecting my headlamp. So close. I sprinted the final stretch, jumped the last couple of rocks, and practically threw myself into the empty parking lot. The moment my boots hit gravel, the footsteps stopped, dead silent. I turned around, chest heaving, headlamp shaking on my forehead. Nothing came out of the trees. Nothing moved on the trail. I fumbled my keys, ripped open my car door, and jumped inside. I locked the door so fast I dropped the key fob between the seats. When I finally got the engine started, I flipped on my high beams and aimed them at the tree line. For one split second, I thought I saw someone step back into the darkness. A shape, a shoulder, maybe an arm. Then the trees swallowed it. I drove out of that lot doing at least 40. When I got home, I sat in my car for a long time trying to convince myself it was an animal, or a trick of sound, or paranoia. But later that night, around 2:13 a.m., I opened my hiking app to see how far I'd gone. And that's when I noticed something. The GPS trail showed a second dot, a second device, following mine, step for step, all the way down. But the part that made my skin crawl, that second dot, stopped moving exactly where I parked my car, and it stayed there for 7 more minutes before disappearing. I never hiked that trail again. I always tell people this was the night I learned real fear doesn't hit you all at once. It just builds and builds, until suddenly you realize you're already in danger. And by then, it's too late. Before I get into it, I just want to say this up front. I saw someone standing inside my tent, not outside, inside, and whoever it was, they shouldn't have been there. The scariest part wasn't the shadow moving inside the tent. It was the moment I realized the zipper hadn't made a sound. No warning, no footsteps, no breathing. Just a silhouette appearing where nothing and no one was supposed to be. This happened 2 years ago. I had been doing solo overnight hikes in a national forest about an hour from where I lived at the time. Nothing extreme, just one-night trips to disconnect. I wasn't a survival expert or anything, but I knew my way around basic gear and trail safety. On this trip, I picked a route that branched off into an unmaintained section of forest. Most people avoided it because the trail was barely visible in some places, but I liked the quiet. It felt untouched. I parked at the ranger station, signed the logbook, and started the hike a little after 3:40 p.m. The sky was clear but already fading toward late afternoon. The trail wound uphill along a creek, then turned deeper into the forest, where the trees grew so thick that even daylight felt muted. My pack wasn't heavy. Tent, water filter, a small stove, freeze-dried dinner, and a compact emergency radio. I reached a clearing around 6:10 p.m. It wasn't an official campsite, no fire ring, no markers, but the ground was flat enough for my tent, and I liked that it was surrounded on all sides by tall pines. Cozy in a quiet way. I pitched my tent, hung my food bag, and boiled water for dinner. The temperature dropped fast. By the time the sun dipped behind the ridge, the woods were already dusky blue. A little later, around 8:45 p.m., I crawled into the tent with my small lantern hanging from the top loop. I read for maybe 20 minutes before turning off the light. The forest was silent, completely still. Even the wind felt absent. I lay there listening to my heart beat slow, starting to drift. And that's when I heard the first zipper. But it wasn't mine. It came from somewhere outside. Faint, quick, like someone opening gear. I held my breath and listened. There was no follow-up sound, no footsteps, just the soft swaying of branches. I told myself another hiker must have set up a camp nearby without me noticing. It was possible. People sometimes went off trail. I eventually fell asleep. When I woke up, it was pitch black and freezing. I checked my watch, 2:31 a.m. I remember rubbing my hands together, trying to work the warmth back into my fingers. That's when I noticed something odd. My lantern, the one hanging from the loop inside my tent, was on the ground. I don't mean it fell. The tent wasn't shaken. The hook wasn't broken. It was as if someone had taken it down and set it carefully beside me. I felt my chest tighten, but I told myself I must have knocked it over in my sleep. I sat up, put the lantern back, and clicked it on to check the tent. Everything looked normal. No tears, no signs of animals, no footprints around the edges. Still, something felt wrong. The air inside the tent felt off, stale, as if someone had been breathing in there with me. I clicked off the lantern and lay back down. Minutes passed. Darkness settled. I slowly calmed my breathing. Then, just as I started to drift, I heard something. Not outside, not on the tent fabric, inside. A tiny shift of weight, like someone adjusting their stance. My eyes snapped open. My heart slammed into my ribs. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The sound had come from the far corner of the tent, too deliberate to be settling fabric, too controlled to be an animal brushing against the wall. It was inside with me. I strained to hear anything else. My ears were ringing from the blood rushing to my head. My fingers went numb. Then I heard the faintest inhale, a human inhale, shallow, shaky, the kind a person makes when they're trying not to be heard. My skin crawled. Every instinct screamed at me to turn on the lantern, but I couldn't move. I was frozen. Seconds dragged. I swear I could feel someone watching me from the darkness. Finally, hands shaking, I reached up slowly, painfully slowly, and clicked on the lantern. Light flooded the tent, and that's when my stomach dropped. There was a shadow in the far corner, tall, still, facing me. The kind of shadow a person makes when standing between the light and the tent fabric. But the wall behind that shadow was solid. No gap, no space. No one could stand there. I blinked hard, thinking my eyes were playing tricks on me. But the shape didn't move, didn't flicker. It was a person, standing in my tent, casting a shadow where no body should fit. My throat closed. I reached for the zipper, not to look outside, but to get out, to run. But as soon as my fingers touched it, something happened that still makes my hands shake thinking about it. The shadow's head tilted, slow, smooth, almost curious, like it knew I was terrified, like it wanted me to know it was aware of me. I yanked the zipper hard and dove out into the freezing night. Outside, the forest was dead silent. My breath puffed into white clouds. The trees were motionless. I spun around and aimed my lantern at the tent. The shadow was gone. The fabric lay flat against the poles. Empty. I forced myself to look inside. Every part of me screaming not to. Nothing. Just my sleeping bag. My pack. A flat piece of fabric in the corner where the shadow had been. I stumbled backward, shaking so violently I could barely stand. That's when I heard another zipper, from deep in the trees, farther away now, like someone quietly closing a backpack. My blood ran cold. Whoever it was, they were outside, moving away. But they had been right next to me only seconds earlier, close enough to breathe inside my tent, close enough to stand over me. I couldn't stay. I threw my gear into my pack without folding anything. My hands kept slipping. My breath kept catching in my throat. Every few seconds, I whipped my head around, expecting to see someone standing behind the trees. It took me less than a minute to break camp, a record I never wanted. I didn't bother with the trail. I just started moving in the direction of the ranger station, using my compass and praying I wasn't veering off too far. Branches snagged my clothes. Roots tripped me. The cold cut straight through my jacket, but I didn't stop, not once. At some point I heard it again, much farther away, but unmistakable. Zeep, a zipper, slow, deliberate, like someone closing a tent or opening one. I don't know how long I walked, maybe 2 hours, maybe less. Everything blurred into panic and cold. But finally through the trees, I saw something. A small metal glint reflecting my lantern light. The signpost near the ranger station. I nearly collapsed. The station itself was dark. Just a locked building with a porch light that motion sensors sometimes triggered. My boots thudded on the wooden steps as I climbed up and leaned against the wall trying to breathe. That's when I saw it. The logbook. And the page I signed earlier. Except now, there was a second signature beneath mine. Same date. Same destination area, no name, just a single line drawn across the signature box and written next to it in shaky pencil. Already here. I stared at it until my eyes watered. Already here. Who had written that? When? Why no name? Then it hit me, when I heard the first zipper hours earlier. Maybe it wasn't another hiker setting up camp. Maybe they had been packing up, leaving, or waiting. My heart hammered so hard I thought I'd pass out. I backed away from the logbook, searching the tree line for any sign of movement, and that's when I noticed something on the ground near the steps. A footprint, not a boot print, barefoot, human. The toes pointed toward the station, not away. I couldn't breathe. I looked around again. Nothing moved, no sound, just that single print in the frost. A ranger found me at sunrise, sitting inside the station's entrance alcove with my pack clutched against my chest. I couldn't explain anything at first. Not the shadow, not the lantern, not the footprints. He checked the logbook. The second signature was still there, but he told me no one else had signed in that entire week. And the pencil that wrote the message? The station didn't keep pencils, only pens. I've replayed that night 1,000 times trying to make sense of it. But there's one detail I never told the ranger. Something I didn't notice until hours later when I emptied my pack at home. My tent's zipper? It was open from the inside, and the last time I touched it, I had closed it tight. I've never told this one out loud before. Not because it's the scariest thing that ever happened to me, though it might be, but because every time I think about it, I get this tight, sick feeling in my chest. Like my body remembers something I'm trying to forget. And the part that stays with me isn't what happened out there in the dark. It's what happened after. I was about 3 miles down the trail when I saw her standing completely still between the trees. Not moving, not reacting to my headlamp, not even blinking. just watching me. At first I thought she needed help, but then I realized something was wrong. Her clothes were clean, too clean. Her hair was dry, even though the storm had soaked the entire forest. And her eyes didn't follow me when I moved. They stayed locked on the exact spot where I'd been standing, as if she wasn't looking at me. She was looking for me. This happened 4 years ago. I'd been dealing with a messy breakup and the kind of stress that eats at you from the inside. So I did what I usually do when my head's spinning too fast. I went hiking. There's a long trail that cuts through a stretch of forest along old logging roads, about 20 miles total, broken into segments. I wasn't planning to do the whole thing. I just wanted a long walk, some breathing room. I parked my car near mile marker 40, close to an old maintenance gate, around 5:18 p.m. The sky was overcast, heavy with the kind of clouds that look like wet cement. Forecast said light rain. Nothing crazy. I brought nothing but a small day pack. Water, a rain jacket, a flashlight, and a snack. The plan was to go 3 or 4 miles in, clear my head, turn around, and be back before dark. The first hour was uneventful. Just the rhythmic crunch of my boots and the distant rumble of thunder. The trail was wide, carved into packed mud and broken stone from the old logging trucks that used to run through here. Most hikers avoided the area because it was too exposed, too empty. Around 6:30 p.m., the rain started. Light at first, then steady. My jacket held up fine. I kept walking, not wanting to turn back yet. I reached mile marker 46, a faded wooden post leaning slightly to one side, and decided that would be my turnaround point. But as I slowed down and pushed my hood back, I heard something that made the hair on my arms rise. A woman's voice, faint, somewhere deeper in the woods, not crying, not screaming, just speaking, talking to someone in a low monotone. I stopped walking. The voice stopped too. The rain pattered softly against the leaves. Thunder rolled somewhere far off. The forest felt tighter suddenly, like it had closed around me. I told myself it was an echo, water trickling, my imagination. But a moment later I heard it again, a sentence, too soft to make out, followed by a long silence. I took a step back, and that's when I saw her, about 40 feet off the trail, standing between the trees, facing directly toward me. My first thought, genuinely, was that she needed help. She wasn't dressed like a hiker. No pack, no jacket, no mud on her clothes. She wore a plain gray sweater and dark pants, the kind of outfit someone might wear around the house. But it was raining, hard. The ground around us was soaked. Branches dripped. My jacket was plastered to my arms, and she looked completely dry. Her hair, shoulder-length dark, didn't even glisten. Her clothes weren't clinging. She didn't shiver. She just stood there. I lifted my flashlight slowly, aiming the beam toward her. The moment the light hit her face, something in me locked up. She didn't react, not even a blink. Her eyes were open, wide, too wide. But the pupils didn't contract under the beam. They just stared, unfocused, straight ahead, at the exact spot where I'd stepped when I first froze. I shifted a few inches to the right. Her eyes didn't move, not even a flicker. It was like she wasn't seeing me, just the memory of where I'd been standing. I swallowed hard. "Ma'am, are you okay?" Nothing. Her chest didn't move. No rise, no fall. I took a step back. This time she moved. Not her body, just her head. It turned, slow, deliberate, until her gaze slid across the trees and landed directly on me. But even then, she didn't blink. Her mouth opened a little, just a crack, and I heard that same faint whispering again. Not language, not words, just a sound like someone repeating a phrase under their breath. The same tone I'd heard before, the same rhythm. My stomach knotted. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to leave, to not take another step closer. But my legs wouldn't move. I forced myself to call out again. "Do you need help?" She stopped whispering. Then she smiled. Not a big smile, just a slow, tense curl of her lips, like someone remembering a joke they heard years ago. The rain suddenly felt colder, the forest quieter. Her hand lifted, trembling, and pointed toward the trail behind me. Not urgently, not warning me, just pointing, like she was showing me something. I didn't want to look. Every part of me resisted, but I turned anyway. The trail was empty. When I turned back, she was gone. No footsteps, no rustling, no movement. Just empty space where she had stood. My heart hammered, my throat closed. I aimed my flashlight around, sweeping the trees, expecting, praying, to see her walking away. But the forest was empty. And that's when I noticed something I still can't explain. The leaves where she'd been standing were dry, untouched by the rain, like she hadn't been standing in the forest. But on top of it,